Month's safety topic. My name is Heather Wildrick Holman with Community Partners for Child Safety, and I'm here this month to talk to you about gun safety and families. All right. So we're going to be talking about some data around gun safety and why that's important. And then we're also going to be talking about different resources, both locally and on the internet, about how we can help keep families safe around this issue, as well as be sure to check out your monthly newsletter and your monthly news bulletin boards in your offices as well. So why are we talking about gun safety in families? We know that this is an important issue as it relates to keeping kiddos safe in our community and in our homes. Um, we know that the number of children living in households in the U.S. with at least one loaded unlocked gun has gone up over the past several years. We know that children can typically know where guns are kept and know how to get access to guns, and that at their core, guns are lethal weapons. So a child could unintentionally injure or kill themselves or others. And there's a physical and psychological trauma that can be long lasting. And it doesn't just affect the child, but it affects communities, it affects the child's family, um, and all of that. But we also know that these are preventable tragedies. But these things are happening at least once per day in the United States. So we're going to definitely discuss some ways in which these things can be preventable. We also must discuss some other aspects around gun safety. And the reality is there's a direct correlation between gun safety and suicide prevention. Kids and adolescents are at an increased risk for suicide when there's guns in the home. Suicide rates in this population are 4 times higher than for kids that live in homes without guns. In the past decade, 40% of these suicides committed by kids and teens did involve firearms. 9 out of 10 of these were with guns that the victims accessed in their own homes or in a relative's home. And then we also have to be mindful of homicide as well. Homicide is 3 times higher when there are guns in homes. Not only that, but 58% of shooting deaths occur in children and teens are homicides. So when we're talking about this, it's important to think about access, right? And so um, children do gain access to unsecured loaded guns in closets, in nightstand drawers, and backpacks and purses and diaper bags. They're left out. They're in couch cushions. They're under the seat of a car. They are, in a bed mattress. Children are very observant. Children and teens are observant. They typically know where these things are being kept. Um, Children find these unsecured guns and unintentionally can shoot themselves or someone else. So Haley Reinhardt, she's a mother who lost her child to an unsafe gun situation. She says it affected our whole lives. Her 4-year-old son found an unsecured loaded gun at a relative's home and shot and wounded himself in the head in 2002. She says even almost 20 years later, we're still dealing with the aftermath of all of this. I don't know if there ever will be any full closure. It's like a wound that never heals. I'm going to now have us watch a quick video from the American Academy of Pediatrics about safe gun storage.
Hi, I'm Dr. Shelley Flace with today's tip for kids from the American Academy of Pediatrics. If you own firearms, it's your responsibility to make sure they're always stored safely. Hiding them in a closet or drawer is not enough. Kids know where they are. Research shows the risk of injury and death is lower if guns are stored unloaded and locked up, with the ammunition locked in a separate place. This is important when children are young, as well as when they grow into teenagers. For more, talk with your pediatrician or visit healthychildren.org.
All right. So I think it's important for us to be thinking about this, not only with the little kids, right, but definitely with our older children as well. This is a really great chart that we'll make sure to include on the bulletin board. I wanted to kind of walk us through this. It is Johns Hopkins is partnering with the Center for Disease Control to do a lot of great work around gun violence prevention, gun safety for families. They are thinking about how to empower practitioners and to have these important conversations with families, with different folks. So this first column is approach, of course. And so approach a patient using these guidelines when discussing firearm injury prevention. So we want to know why people own the firearms. And we want to make sure that they know the basics of firearms, safe storage, and local policies around this. We can be respectful to them and be respect their decision to own a firearm, and maybe this is a part of their identity. We can really focus on harm reduction, propose steps, even small steps, to help reduce risk. Reducing some risk is better than not reducing any. And be individualized. Find out what works best for each patient. There is no one size fits all approach to reducing risk. Then we want to think about assessing. So we can assess for risk factors, especially for suicide and interpersonal violence. So, is there a history of suicide attempts in the home, a history of violence or intimate partner violence? Is there any issues around dementia or cognitive impairment? Have they had any recent relationship or job loss? Do they have any mental health concerns like psychiatric disorders like bipolar or depression or schizophrenia? When there are children in the home, we should always ask about firearms. Ideation and threats. Have patients thought about harming themselves or others or made threats? We should consider them to be an elevated risk. Access to firearms. If they're making threats or having ideations, or any other risk factors are present, we want to ask about access to firearms. And then the willingness to collaborate. We want the patient or the client to be hopefully have the ability and willingness to collaborate with us on a plan for safety. And then we want to definitely empower you to act. So, and empower our clients or our patients to act. So we want them to have safe storage, so keep them unloaded and locked up. We have the trigger locks and the gun safety locks. We'll talk about that. Sometimes we may have to have them do a temporary transfer. Various parties can hold on to the firearm so they are out of the home entirely until they have a crisis would pass, if that's the situation. If there's any mental health concerns, or we have concerns around suicide risk, we can look into that. And then sometimes we can even help the family navigate protective orders as well. So the Moms for Gun Safety, I may be pronouncing that wrong, but they have Everytown is an national organization, and it's moms. Um, I'm blanking now on the exact name of the organization, but we're going to now talk a little bit more about some of the work that they do. But Not an Accident Index is something that they do track. They track all of the gun violence related incidences and across the U.S. And when we zoom in and look specifically at Indiana, in 2025, there were at least 12 unintentional shootings by children, resulting in 6 deaths and 6 injuries in Indiana. If you would want to check this information out, you can go to the website there, everytownresearch.org/maps/not an accident. So one highlighted incident here in Indianapolis was a 2-year-old, June 17th, 2025, about a year ago. It did result sadly in his death. The child shot themselves, and it was a 2-year-old boy who unintentionally shot and killed himself in a parked car. It is not yet known who the firearm belongs to or how the child accessed it. So this was in a car situation. So we're going to see now the map that kind of shows us that they are tracking this. This is as up to date as May 21st, 2026. You can go and you can zoom out in on the states. When you hover over these dots, it actually shows you more information about those various incidences here in the state of Indiana. So we also have to think about gun violence in schools when we think about gun safety and gun violence prevention. So we know that gun violence continues to happen all across the United States, and it has continued to happen since 1999. I am old enough to remember that Columbine situation and what kind of life was like prior to that. I think many of us who were alive for 9/11 kind of remember life pre 9/11, 9 post 9/11. And I think in many ways, many of us who were alive during Columbine kind of remembers that life before that incident. And then now it almost has just become, I don't want to say normalized, but I'm not sure of another word I would want to use to explain that it's become quite common, unfortunately. In 2022, there were 72 shootings. In a study by the Department of Education, it was found that 93% of school shooters plan these attacks in advance. So we have to take these situations seriously. NEA today, they are working with educators to end the era of school shootings that has defined students' lives. So, some great resources and information from NEA today as it relates to schools. Um, we want to also kind of think through as we think about prevention practices, really emphasizing the importance in the homes of the families we serve, secure gun storage practices. So we want parents and caregivers to understand and know talking to kids is never going to be enough. It is a good precaution, but it's not the only thing. Um, Continual ongoing conversations around gun safety is super important, but we also have to limit access. And these conversations should evolve as children get older, but they never guarantee a child's safety. Children are curious, right? They are curious about the things that we're interested in, whether it be a phone, a firearm, or other things, whether it, a mother's makeup, you name it. Kids are really curious about these different things, right? Exploration is a hallmark of childhood. So we know that children who go through a week-long gun safety training program are just as likely as children with no training whatsoever to approach and play with a handgun when they find one. And we can think about that as it stands too, not just curiosity, but some children just simply don't understand and know that those are lethal at their core. And they don't understand the difference between those and toys, right? It's always an adult's responsibility to prevent unauthorized access to guns, not a child's responsibility to avoid them. And I think that's really, really important that we explain that to the parents and to caregivers. It's not the child's responsibility; it is the adult's responsibility to keep those guns away from children. So we want to make sure they never leave children unsupervised in a home with a gun, especially if it's not secure. If our child does see a gun, we can teach them the four important rules. I've seen this like really played out and spelled out a couple different ways, but stop what you're doing, don't touch it, leave the area, tell an adult. We want to keep guns out of sight and out of reach of children by always storing them securely. We want it to be a child-resistant lock on that either gun lock box or trigger lock. We always want to separate that ammunition, as we heard from the American Academy of Pediatrics. We want to keep the safety catch in place until we're ready to fire it if someone does have a gun. We are going to talk a little bit more in a while about the Be Smart campaign, and a crucial part of that is wherever our child goes, ask about guns. Do they own guns? Are those guns locked up too? Because your child might do a stay all night or be babysat, and we want to make sure the guns are put away and not accessible in that home either. If a family member is in crisis and they're posing a risk to themselves or others, temporarily remove the gun from our home. That's a good strategy to think about as well. All right. So, as we think through these strategies and empowering parents to keep their kids safe, especially at other homes, we really do want to empower them to not only keep their home safe with firearms, but keep other homes where the child may be going safe as well. So here's an example of a text back and forth. My kids are looking forward to playing with your kids. A warning, Leah's allergic to strawberries. Mine too. Okay. Hey, I always ask families where my kids go about firearms. Do you have guns at home? Yes, we do have a gun. Great. Jimmy is so curious and always getting into things. How are your firearms stored? We put the gun in a safe and lock up the ammo separately. See you at 3. So it can be that easy and that courageous and brave. All right, this comes from the Youth Violence Prevention, Marion County Youth Violence Prevention Coalition. It says, before your child goes to someone's home, ask if there's an unlocked gun in the house. So here's another example of that text. Before I drop my son off, I just wanted to check and see if you have firearms in your house and confirm how they're stored. I heard a story on the news that made me decide I should always ask. That leads us to talk now about the Be Smart campaign. So the Be Smart campaign is a great national campaign. We really think they're doing fantastic work. But at their core, Be Smart is always wanting folks to think about how firearms are stored securely. The Be Smart framework is designed to help parents and adults normalize conversations about gun safety and take responsible actions that prevent child gun deaths and injuries. You can visit the Be Smart website for more information. They've got tons of fantastic information. So, what does Be Smart stand for? Well, it starts for S is for secure, M is for model, A is for ask, R is for recognize, and T is for tell. So, what does that mean? Secure all guns in our homes, model responsible behavior around guns, ask about the presence of secure guns in other homes, recognize the role of guns in suicide, as we've been talking about today, and tell our peers about Be Smart. Whether you follow them on Instagram, Facebook, check out their website. They have a lot of great resources and printables and guides. So we always want to assume that teens and children can find those guns. So it's iterating to us the importance that it's locked up, unloaded, and the ammunition is kept separate. Um, like I said before, we have to emphasize that assume kids can find guns. Nearly 360 children a year access guns and unintentionally shoot themselves or someone else. It's never enough just to hide it in the couch cushion, hide it under the car seat, etc. 41% of adolescents in gun-owning households report that they have easy access to the guns in their homes. So that's something to think about too. So we want them to utilize safe practices in keeping these guns secured. So we know that these big full gun safes can be pretty pricey. I don't know how well you can see that there, but $200 to $2,000. There's lock boxes, console vehicle gun safes, gun cases for home or in transit storage, trigger locks, and cable locks. So we do provide you the gun lock boxes, trigger locks, and a variety of these are all found in the safety store, the trigger lock, cable lock, or gun lock box. It doesn't hurt to have, maybe a combination of a locked box and a trigger lock. We also want to be mindful of other kinds of guns. We've had sad situations happen with other kinds of guns, and they also can cause injury or be unsafe for the youth as well. So, households that locked both firearms and ammunition were associated with an 85% lower risk of unintentional firearm injuries. But we have to lock up all the guns. So, whether it's an airsoft gun, which is a BB gun, or a paintball gun, or a pellet gun, or a dart gun, these can cause serious injury, especially to the head, neck, and abdomen or eyes. They can also be sadly mistaken for a quote unquote real firearm. And we've had some unfortunate situations happen with that, where those are mistaken for those. Let's talk now about where we can get gun lockboxes. So there is something called Project Child Safe. They do a lot of really great work around helping communities get access to lock boxes or cable locks or trigger locks. They partner with our local law enforcement. So working and partnering with our local law enforcement, they do disseminate gun safety information, and also the trigger locks are accessible through that as well. You can go to projectsafe.org or reach out directly to those local law enforcement locations. Um, you, of course, do have access to gun lock boxes and trigger locks and cable locks in your safety store as well. Also, we know from Marion County Youth Violence Prevention and I stopped by a local library just a few weeks ago, and I confirmed that you can still access gun locks at all of our area libraries as well. You just have to ask them at the front desk for that, and they will be happy to give you a lockbox. So we want to give a quick plug and shout out to Marion County Youth Violence Prevention Coalition. So it's in support from the health department. They have 60 organizations with shared interest in preventing youth violence in Indy. The coalition remains focused on its mission to convene community stakeholders, conduct research, and provide leadership and empower people to create opportunities that build more peaceful homes, schools, neighborhoods, and workplaces. So they're doing a lot of great work, and they're always looking for folks to get involved with them. Additionally, we want to make sure you know through the Department of Public Safety, we have some other really amazing programs as well. We have the Center for Conflict Resolution. So community mediation services are available through them, and we can have folks go through them and get trained to become a mediator for their neighbors, for their neighborhood, their community. They also do conflict resolution and coaching. They are a neutral third party option for managing conflict and designing an approach to discuss the conflict with the other person on their own. Um, this is great for preparing for community mediation, enhancing skills in handling conflict. So if anybody would want to access that, they can definitely feel free to do that. Um, how can they and how can they not support? Well, they are not going to support or be able to help out with DV situations. If there's significant mental health, they're not the best option for that. They do not navigate custody and divorce situations either, or if there are formal charges. And if there's any kind of not a good way to get a hold of both parties, it can't move forward, right? So those are some examples there too of what they can help with. Eviction, landlord tenant things, interpersonal issues, neighbor disputes, business disputes. We know conflict resolution builds peace. We continue to stop the trigger before it's pulled. Everyone needs to know how to resolve conflict. Everyone needs to know how to hear someone else's point of view. So that's a great resource. Let's now look at public health departments. So they have a fantastic violence prevention program at the Marion County Department of Health. So they can put programs on about gun safety, dating violence, bullying, communication skills, suicide. So if you are interested in learning more about these programs, you can definitely reach out to them and their violence prevention coordinator and find out more about that. The reason why we are talking about this in the month of June is because June is National Gun Violence Awareness. So this year it's being observed the 5th through the 7th, where Orange Day is observed on those days. I'll try to find out if there's a very specific day that we're being asked to wear orange. Orange is the color that hunters wear in the woods to protect themselves, and it honors Hadia Pendleton, who was shot while she was playing at a Chicago playground when she was 15. And so there's a lot of public awareness that goes on with the Wear Orange movement. We have a couple events happening locally that I wanted to give a quick plug to. So on the Monument Circle on June 7th at 2 p.m., we'll have an event called A Mother's Cry. Please join A Mother's Cry Indy as we stand with moms across the city to advocate to stop gun violence. Mothers who have lost children to gun violence will stand united and bring awareness and demand a future free from gun violence. And then we also have a Wear Orange picnic happening that same day at 1 p.m. at Garfield Park. So we're invited to go to this family-friendly picnic during Wear Orange weekend. Come to the short program and meet gun safety advocates. Wear Orange to raise up gun violence survivors and lives lost to gun violence. We will provide hot dogs, chips, bring whatever else you'd like to have. We will meet in the Ellis Shelter at Garfield Park. We also want to make sure you know that Prevent Child Abuse Indiana has a really great Safe Touch training that talks about firearm safety, and they have their gun safety quick cards. So just a couple important bullet points from that is explaining to children that guns that they see on TV or in videos are different than what they play with. Very young children will not remember a command about touching. Some children as young as 3 have the strength to squeeze a trigger, and talk to anyone who might care for your child about their safety practices. They want us to remember that bullets are choking hazards. We talked already today, but I want to remind you that even older children and teens are separated from firearms. That even if we don't own guns, maybe we will go to places that there are firearms. And if we have it out, we want to keep it in our line of sight. Another really great resource is a newer resource called Agree to Agree. So we can go on there and find conversation guides. We can learn about gun injuries. We can learn about resources and tools about how to talk to children, how to talk to other caregivers, and just help us to feel courageous and strong about talking about gun safety. There is so much great information that is out there about this important topic. We could go on, but we want to make sure you are aware of all these various resources about gun safety. Please share the gun safety information with the families that you serve and utilize those gun safety resources in the safety store. If you have any additional questions or comments about anything that we've talked about this month or any other month, please do not hesitate to reach out. We thank you so much. Take care, and we will see you next month.